So yeah, the first reason why I wanted to get into this is because a lot of people, when it comes to their health, a big barrier that they experience is their metabolism, right? It's the reason why they either can't lose weight, can't put on muscle, they have issues with their energy, they have brain fog, and they can't perform at work. And they've tried a bunch of things with their nutrition, with their workouts, and even trying other things like supplements and whatnot, but nothing seems to be making that difference. And the big thing that I've noticed is the fundamentals of the metabolism. So today's presentation is on like resetting your metabolism, and and this is the big reason why. Is because a lot of people, that's sort of the sticking point that they can't cross. Right, energy levels are low. They feel weak in the gym. They're not able to perform at work, and even we have to be real about this. They don't feel confident, out when they go outside. Right, they're not 100% sure in the way they look, in the way they feel, and most importantly, I'll get into this when I talk a bit about my story and why I'm even sharing this information, is they fear losing control. If you've been in that position where you've lost control in the past, it's a very, very scary thing. And it's something that you definitely don't want to go through. Okay. And so you're making all this progress and you can't seem to make it past. Okay. Now, the goal here with this presentation is to give everyone that first step to be in a position where, we look good, feel good, have energy, we can focus on the important work that we have to get done, and we have control over every area of our life. We control our health, we control our personal lives, professional lives, family, all that stuff. We know that we're in control of these things that are not letting loose. And I think for me personally, I might be a bit biased to this as someone who, coaches people in their health for a living, but I think health is sort of that foundational one where if you don't have that, everything else starts to sort of fall apart. Okay. And, like the good old Deion Sanders thing, I always like to refer to this. We look good, feel good, play good. And we can change that to perform good. That's a big part of it. When we look good, we feel good. And then when we feel good, we can do whatever the hell we want and make shit happen. Pardon my French. But now, like I said, this is just the first piece of the puzzle. This is sort of how to walk through that first 7 days of how to reset your metabolism and get rid of that sticking point that I was talking about that a lot of people experience. Okay, so this is going to be a basic set of habits. Every day, there's going to be a new habit that we introduce. And that's sort of how I'm going to be going through the process here day by day, what you'd introduce on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and all the way to day 7. So that by day 7, you're already well on the path to resetting your metabolism. And these are the most bare bone fundamentals that a lot of people miss. A lot of people will get excited about, food cycling, periodized workout structures, detoxing, binders, these crazy supplements. But in many ways, that's putting the cart before the horse. They try to solve the more advanced problems, the more, nuanced problems of health without even getting the fundamentals correct. So that's what a big thing is with the metabolic reset, is that we want to nail down the fundamentals as a crucial foundation for everything else to work. So when we talk about losing weight, putting on muscle, having more energy, everything stems from that. Now, a common misconception with these sorts of things is that they take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of knowledge in order to be able to do on a regular basis. The thing is that these sorts of protocols on the higher end take about 5 to 8 hours per week. And if someone were to tell me I don't have 5 to 8 hours to spend on my health, I would say, well, how many hours per day are you spending on your phone or on TV doing things that you know that you probably shouldn't be doing, like scrolling on TikTok, on Netflix, watching sports or whatnot? If you're dedicating too many hours to that, 'cause look, I understand we need our leisure time, but if you're dedicating too much time to that, then I really struggle to take that excuse of I don't have time when there's so much time going towards tasks that don't provide you with any benefit, right? If you were to tell me that I spend all that time reading or with my family, sure, by all means, I can accept that. But if it's on your phone or on TV, then that's one that it's a bit sketchier. The next one is effort. And well, with this one, you could go through the motions and still get results with this program, with these sorts of protocols. But when it comes to health and these sorts of practices, you get out what you put in. So if you're not putting in your best foot forward every day, then you can't expect the best results. All right. So this one's completely up to you. How bad do you want it? How much change do you want? It's completely up to how much effort you put in. All right. The more effort, the better. And the last, but certainly not least, is knowledge. Now, this is one where I can actually sympathize with, is that sometimes people just genuinely don't have the information. And ignorance for a lot of people, and I don't mean this that they just don't know, and that's perfectly okay. That is something that I understand, which is exactly why I run these monthly live coaching calls, and that's why I also post online on LinkedIn, is because I know that a lot of people don't have the information necessary in order to make those changes to their health, to their nutrition, to their exercise protocols and whatnot. So this is the point of this call right here, is that by the end of it, you know exactly what you need to do to reset your metabolism in these 7 days following these basic habits. And a bonus tip for you guys is going to be in day 7, because that's what kind of allows everything to work seamlessly and without much effort to maintain. Now, like I said, because I respect everyone's time here, I'm going to quickly share my screen. I have a bonus for you guys at the end. I'll let you guys know how you can get access to it. But real quick, I just want to show you this. Everything we talk about today is, I've made a few versions of these. Everything we're talking about today is in this guide here that goes in detail on all the habits, how to implement it step by step. As you can see, this is a 36-page doc, so it goes quite in depth on the topics we talk about today. To get access to it, I'll let you guys know at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, if there aren't any questions before we get into everything, I'm gonna get the PowerPoint loaded up, and we will get right into the presentation. Any questions?
Nope.
Awesome. Drink some water. All right, let's do it. Let me share my screen and let me go into present mode. Awesome. So what I quickly want to touch on is why I'm even sharing this information. Like I said, I would get into. So this is me in 2020. I was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was a potato-sized tumor that was snuggling up right next to my heart. And as you can imagine, when you hear news like that, your whole world just kind of shatters. And so in order for me to go through this process and try to heal my body and treat the cancer, I had to do many rounds of chemotherapy, immunotherapy. Along with that, I also had to do 2 stem cell transplants. Both of them were very, very, harsh on my body. I'll get into the second one, which was even harsher and probably one of the worst things I've done from a health standpoint on my body. It did help with the cancer, but my body was left struggling to heal itself afterwards. And along the way, because this treatment took longer than I would hope, initially it was supposed to be just 6 months. Eventually, over time, because things weren't working, it took longer. It took 3.5 years, so 3 years longer than it was supposed to. I started to lose some trust in the standard of care, because when I asked them, is there anything I can do nutritionally or otherwise to help treat the cancer? They said, not really, just balanced diet. But what does a balanced diet mean? There's really nothing, right? All they really were the drugs that they were giving me, the chemotherapy. But that's not enough. There has to be more to this. It can't just be that. And while they were very knowledgeable and the care I got was as good as it could be, I did always feel that they were missing the nutrition aspect of it, because that's so key the more I've dug into it. And so as I began to look into it, I began to feel better from recover better from my chemotherapy. I began to have better progress with my PET scans and things like that. And I was able to actually eventually become cancer-free alongside of the standard of care that I was doing. But I found that nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle were very, very fundamental for the healing process. And this is sort of where it really happened. It was during this. So this is my big transformation. This is what I went through in the summer of 2020. It was my second stem cell transplant, which was big. This was me before. I took this at the hospital. As you can see, I'm all geared up this was a apheresis line to get all the medications. And within 30 days, or even less than that, actually, this was me afterwards. I was down 30 pounds. I could barely eat. My energy levels were terrible. Like, to take this photo, my hand was shaking. My phone was too heavy for my hand. So I was in shambles. My body was screaming for help. And I was essentially thrust into a position where I had no choice but to figure out how to improve my body, to heal my body and recover, because I didn't get that support from my doctors or from the dietitians or anyone related to the whole process. I had to figure it out on my own. Luckily for me, though, I was already learning this stuff getting into this point. So all it was an opportunity for me to really put things to the test. And the results were this. After 7 months, I was able to make a massive transformation, go from 170 pounds here in this photo, which for reference, I'm 6'3". So 170 pounds at 6'3" is rather skinny, as you can see, to around 200 pounds, as you can see in this photo. So I'd put on the 30 pounds of muscle. I'd regained my energy. I felt like I was almost back to normal, about 95%. Occasionally, I would have spells where I would have the fatigue again, but they wouldn't last as long and they wouldn't nearly be as severe. And so I thought to myself, okay, if this information has already taken me this far, what happens if I continue to dive deep into this to see how far it can take me? And the more I dug into it, the more I learned that this is something that more people need to know, even for things outside of cancer, for things as simple as energy issues, for maybe they can't build the muscle, for being overweight, for being unfulfilled in life. I think this is information that everyone should know. It's as important as learning the fundamentals of finance or relationships or things like that. It's absolutely paramount. Things like nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle. So these are going to be the principles that I'm going to share with you today. The very basic fundamentals that I did back then to get me where I was there, to go from 170 pounds in shambles with my health to 200 pounds, feeling good, feeling strong, and now to this point where I am now, where I've continued to feel better and better over as time goes on, and feeling stronger and feeling really bright about the future that I'm going to get to live the rest of my life, knock on wood, without cancer. Now, again, why am I sharing this? Well, it's because no one knows this stuff. Every time I went into the cancer center and sitting in the chemo suite, I would look into the eyes of the people around me because it's pretty communal in the chemo suite. And you would see people who are hoping that the harsh medications that they are taking are going to be the trick that helps them live. Because a lot of these people had death sentences placed. I heard some very scary things in there. One in particular was a young father. I think he was maybe about 30 years old, who was on the phone with one of his buddies, maybe his brother even, and he was talking about how the doctor had misdiagnosed him for 6 months, and he had, in the meantime, just had a daughter. And now he was very worried about the fact that his wife was going to have to bear the burden of all the bills and raise those two. I think he had two kids, but he just recently had another daughter. He had going to have to raise the kids on her own, and even more so that the kids were going to have to live their lives. Being another one of those kids that said, "Yeah, I never knew my father because he died when I was 2 from cancer," which I've heard multiple times from many people in my life. And people are suffering from this. The saddest thing with it too was that he wasn't worried about himself as much as he was worried about his wife and his kids, because he knows that they're the ones that are truly going to suffer. His suffering, unfortunately, I don't know if he's with us anymore. He may have passed on, but he knows that his suffering is limited, but his wife and his daughters and his kids, I don't know what the other one was, but his 2 kids are going to have to bear that responsibility. So a lot of people are suffering from this, and with things like cancer, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, even things like low energy. It starts off with lower energy, but then it can manifest into depression. It can manifest into sort of an apathy for life, not having like any sort of oomph or gusto to go out and move in life, and just feeling unfulfilled. And that's one of the worst places I think we can be, because it's only downhill from there. And so on top of that, I also started to realize that not many people know about this, and only a small group of people actually practice this information. Because you hear a lot of people who they understand some of these concepts, but they don't actually practice them because they don't know how good it can be on the other side of practicing them. And like I'll get into, a lot of people who, I call this 1% of health, the people who know and practice this information, a lot of people in the 1% of health know what it's like to lose control of their health. And so they start to do these health practices so that they can get to that other side. They do it out of necessity. I know I am like one of those people. I had to do it out of necessity because, as you see in the photo, I was in a tough spot. And so I had to figure it out. Otherwise, I would still be recovering to this day. And it's been a little over 2 years now since I did that stem cell transplant. So the 1% health is what I like to coin this, is that it's the information and the practices and techniques that you practice on a daily basis to elevate your health. And that's a big goal of mine, is I want to help as many men get into the 1% of health so that they can live fulfilled lives and lead good families and pursue amazing things with their careers. That's sort of my big overarching goal with this. And the 1% of health, just to quickly get into it, has 3 basic tenets. The first is health first. And what health first means is that in any pursuit that we have in life, we always put our health in the forefront. Okay, and what that means is, say we're pursuing our career or our or a business, let's say, we're making sure that the business or our career never compromises our health for too long. We make sure that we're always taking care of our health along the way. So if we have to spend late nights, early mornings, hard days of focused effort where we're going to be drained, we're making sure that our nutrition's on point. We're doing things to get rid of the stress in our minds. We're doing things to be social and get rid of that anxiety and all that kind of stuff, making sure our guts are taken care of. We're not cranking caffeine and abusing our body in other ways so that we can perform at a high level in an artificial way. We're doing it in a way that supports our body from the foundation up, okay? Putting our health first. The next is relentless self-education and implementation. So like I said, a lot of people, they educate themselves, but they don't implement. The 1% of health, they continuously self-educate and implement. They never act like they figured it out. They always act like students to the game because you never want to believe that you've mastered it. That's when you stop getting better. And the last one, and certainly not least, is health is the gateway drug to a fulfilling life. I've kind of touched on this already, but if health is in your way, if health is in your way and you've lost control, it's very, very scary. And I know I can speak from experience that when I had cancer, it felt like I had a chain around my neck for those 3.5 years. I wanted to go out and pursue things. I was playing football in university, and also I couldn't participate as a university student normally. I had to be more cautious. I couldn't play football, and I had to really sacrifice a lot of things. And I had fatigue, and I had to slow school down in many ways. It took me 6 years to graduate because of the cancer. And I felt like I had this chain. But as soon as I got diagnosed, my doctor told me that I was in remission and that I had no longer had the cancer, and I got my energy back and my gusto for life essentially from repairing my health. That's when it was like off to the races, and that's how I've been living ever since. And this is all through an increased level of awareness. Now, this is not because they have certain body fat measurements or blood work markers or things like that. This is because they just have an increased level of awareness for nutrition, for exercise, for lifestyle. Okay. That's sort of the goal of this presentation. Like I said, is to give you that piece of knowledge, which is in a way elevating your level of awareness towards the world of health. Okay. So let's get into it. The 7-day metabolic reset, kickstart your fat loss, build muscle, and live your life with more energy. Day one is going to be the most fundamental thing for resetting your metabolism, which is nutrition. Obviously, metabolism is heavily revolves around your nutrition. So we want to make sure that this is on point. So we want to do a nutrition overhaul because the main issue is metabolic dysfunction in a lot of people. And what that means is that the body becomes very, very carb dependent and it can't function properly with fat. And what happens with this is a lot of people then start to have an impaired mitochondria. And then because the mitochondria is what they call the powerhouse of the cell, it's what produces energy for the body when you feed it things like fat and carbohydrates. And when the mitochondria is impaired, that's when you start to have a lot of problems. That's actually where a lot of cancers come out of. It's from the broken mitochondria. And on top of that, it can cause energy issues on sort of the more moderate problems, energy issues and things like that. So this is the first step that we want to sort of fix. And to do this, we have 3 main steps, okay? We want to cut out ultra-processed junk food. This is by far the biggest bang for your buck thing is cut out ultra-processed junk food because it causes a serious amount of inflammation around the entire body, particularly the digestive system. And on top of that, most of these are laced with ultra-processed carbohydrates and sugars. So again, that jacks up your insulin, that messes up your metabolism and hurts your mitochondria in the long run. Next, we want to focus on nutrient-dense whole foods, and I'll get into my favorites in the next slide. But yeah, the focus on and like you see in the photo here, it's the beef and things like that. But we want to focus on these because a lot of people miss out on the micronutrients that are in foods, and also the more important side of nutrition, which is not so much the carbs and things like that, but the proteins and the fats, and like I said, the micronutrients. And last but certainly not least, it's prioritizing fat as a fuel source more so than carbs. If you look at the way carbs function in the body, they don't function as the main fuel source, they function as a supplementary fuel source whenever we work at higher intensities. On a baseline right now, all of us sitting here, even me that I'm talking, waving my arms, but all of us sitting here are burning fat because fat is the baseline fuel source that we use as much as possible until, let's say, we were to go on a run. that's when we start to use more carbohydrates because you can burn carbs faster than you can fats. But for right now, there's no threat, there's no imminent activity that we're doing. Our body can coast on burning fats. Now, the key here, like I said, is in the foods that you eat. So getting rid of the processed foods and switching more to the nutrient-dense foods with a greater priority on fat. And the five main foods that I like to always recommend people are meat, and this is in order: meat, eggs, dairy, fruits, and vegetables. Okay, like you see in this plate, we have a pound of beef approximately as our protein and a big fat source. We have the sort of a guacamole behind, which is a great fat source. The mushrooms, which is good veggies and things like that. There's no fruit here because this was one of my lunches. We have the mushrooms here, which is a great source of a variety of micronutrients, and a little bit of carbs here because, well, I haven't met a person who doesn't like sweet potatoes because they're absolutely delicious. But this is the sort of the diet that we want to focus on. We want to focus on foods that provide us a great bang for our buck, foods that provide us first and foremost with a lot of protein, a lot of fat, a lot of micronutrients, and then carbs are sort of like an afterthought for the way I like to prescribe things because they're not that important. They're important to the body, but they're not that important. They shouldn't make up 40% of our diet like the food pyramid or a lot of professionals like to recommend. Okay. Now, I'd like to give a quick example as to what some of my meals look like as a bit of a behind the scenes. This is what I've been running now for the last 2 months because I was in the summer, I was in Greece. So having a steady diet wasn't the easiest thing, but I still kept it following these principles, eating tons of meat, eggs, dairy, fruits, and vegetables. But now things have become much more regimented since I've gotten back to Canada. So meal one here is a shake. Now this is I have to ask for an open mind, but this shake comprises of 5 raw eggs, of 4 ounces of coconut cream, some coconut oil, and a banana. And let me tell you, it's the best banana smoothie you can ever have. Also, a little bit of raw honey, and it is absolutely delicious. This is about 1,000 calories. This is my post-workout shake, and it gives me absolutely everything I need post-workout. Meal two is similar to what you saw on the previous slide. It's basically a pound of beef with some sort of fat source or some vegetable or even sometimes a fruit on the side just to get a little bit extra carbs and a little bit of micronutrients as well. But usually it looks something along these lines. Meal three is usually something similar to prioritizing meat with some veggies on the side. Here is some spaghetti squash with some cucumber. Here is some mixed veggies. I think there's some onions, some shiitake mushrooms, some sweet potatoes, things like that. And as a snack, it will be some fruit and some cheese, as you see over here, and then some kefir on the bottom here. Now this is gonna allude to day 5 when we talk about gut health. But this is sort of what a day looks like. If I'll snack on foods like this, and my main meals will consist of this. And usually I'll consume around 3,000-ish calories a day, and that's perfect for maintaining, or actually right now I'm trying to put on body weight, so putting on some body weight and maintaining my lifts in the gym. But this is sort of how the fundamentals of resetting your metabolism. It's going to be lower on the carbs, higher on the fat, and making sure the protein is adequate. Okay. Day 2. Also, I see we have a. Okay. I'll get to this question at the end just because it seems like it's a bit longer, but I'll make sure to get back to it. Day 2 is metabolic reset workouts. What workouts we can do to help reset our metabolism the best. Okay, so the goal with the workouts, as I like to put them, is to prioritize building muscle. This for me is by far the best bang for your buck activity that you can do from a metabolic standpoint because building muscle requires both a lot of energy and a lot of nutritional resources. You need a lot of protein, you need a lot of fats, you need a lot of micronutrients as well, and you need carbohydrates on top of that to support all of that because carbohydrates release some important hormones involved in the anabolic process. Okay, because I have a little sort of flow here where it goes: you stimulate the muscle to grow, you then burn energy to build the muscle, and then bigger muscles require more energy even at rest, and then you repeat that process, and then over and over you start to burn more fuel by having more muscle. Right now at rest you would burn more because muscles are very, very energy hungry. It's a very energy hungry organ or a set of tissues. So we want to make sure that we have bigger and bigger muscles. And even in the process of building bigger muscles, it will help us with resetting our metabolism. Okay. Now, you don't need 5 to 6 workouts per week to do this. You only need 2 or 3 per week, around 30 to 45 minutes each, and you will get phenomenal results even from that. The key thing is, like I talked about, it all revolves around your effort. You get in what you get out, what you put in. So if you put in a lot of effort into these workouts and you make sure that every rep is meaningful, you don't just go in there la-di-da through the motions, you're actually doing it with intensity. That's when you start to make real big progress, and that's when you start to put on a lot of muscle. But again, you have to make sure that you set up the workouts correctly, and they need to be intense. They need to be done with intent. Okay. When it comes to, I'll quickly talk about some rep ranges. I don't want to get too specific in the numbers because, again, it's more so about the intensity within which you do things, not so much the specifics on rep schemes and things like that. But when it comes to set and rep schemes and exercises, I usually recommend no more than 4 to 6 exercises per workout, and every exercise to do anywhere between 2 and 4 sets, ideally around 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12. Actually, 8 to 12 if you're going more for hypertrophy, but sometimes for some main lifts, I like to go down between 3 to 6 reps for things like bench press, squat, and Indian deadlifts and things like that. Things that I want to be moving, I care about moving a lot of weight. I will lower the rep range even further. But for the most part, you stick to 6 to 10, 6 to 12 good reps for 2 to 4 sets, you will be fine and dandy. And if you have any questions on how to set up workouts, we can talk about that in the Q&A session at the end. And there's even more detail in the doc, in the guide, just because I know I wouldn't have time to go through everything if I gave if I went through every little detail. So that's it on the workouts. The key thing is we want to focus on building muscle first and foremost. More muscle tissue is a good thing. Big and strong muscles are not just for show. Next is the power of a walk. So day 3 is going to be an easier day because we've kind of covered the 2 big behemoth of the habits, which is tough to it's tough to implement the nutrition and the workouts right away. Those are usually the 2 things that people struggle the most with. So before we add anything else major to this, we want to make sure that I add something a bit easier, which is a walk. And a walk is one of my favorite forms of cardio because not only does it burn fat when you walk, it's very passive. It doesn't increase appetite too much, so it doesn't cause people to overeat. And on top of that, it also is very good for improving mental clarity. And things like that. I don't know if you've ever been stressed at work, but if you take some time to go for a walk afterwards, you feel phenomenal. This is all done walking outside and without headphones, like going on a nice trail, seeing some nice scenery. And the reason without the headphones is because you have to be comfortable sitting in with your own thoughts. To me, that's a very important thing. When I had cancer, I couldn't do that. And so I had to force myself to do that because I didn't like that I would get anxiety almost when I would go outside without my headphones. So now there's 4 main reasons why this is my favorite. I've talked about some of them, but here is the rest. One is that walking burns fat as fuel. So again, if you want to talk about training the body to burn fat as fuel, this is a great way to do it. Next is sunlight gives you vitamin D. A lot of people are vitamin D deficient, so any more reason to go outside and get some exposure to the sun is going to be very, very beneficial. Also, when we talk about hormonal health, things like testosterone is very, very much affected by vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a precursor to testosterone, so you want to make sure that you're outside in the sun as much as possible. I know that we're getting into the winter months here, but still, getting some sunlight is better than no sunlight. The next one is that it's good for your heart. So elevating your heart rate a little bit, especially when it comes to a walk, is one of the best things you can do for your heart. Outside of training intense cardio, going for a walk is going to be something that provides your body with a ton of longevity and a ton of good health. And then the last one, like I touched on, it's a perfect mental break during a stressful day. If you have a lot on your plate, taking that extra 10-15 minutes to go just for a quick walk, you'll be much more refreshed when you come back, and you'll be able to be more productive during work hours. And if I can add a bonus 5th one is digestion. It's the reason why Italians, after every meal, they like to go for walks, is because it helps with digestion. The movement will help funnel food around and things like that. So that's day 3. Day 3 is all about just getting a walk. Very simple, nothing complicated. You want to focus on getting 20 minutes per day. If not, going for multiple 20-minute walks per day is ideal. Now we want to start working on recovery because we talked about nutrition, we talked about muscle building workouts, we talked about going for walks. Doing that on top of work can start to get pretty stressful for a lot of people. So we want to make sure that we have a a plan in place to deal with recovery. And a lot of people don't know how to recover well because they end up like this guy, right? Sleep deprived, and then they're cranking caffeine, and then they start burning themselves out, and they repeat that process over and over. As they get more sleep deprived, they start to drink more caffeine, and then the cycle continues. And it's a pretty bad cycle. I used to see it all the time. I nearly fell into it at university, and I would see it all the time at university afterwards. Is that people just always with a cup of coffee in their hand, and I get it, coffee just tastes good, but no one, I don't think anyone drinks it initially for the taste. I think we all start drinking it for the energy benefits, and then we start to like the taste over afterwards. And so the cure is sleep and warm baths, particularly sleep because we have to do that every day. However, adding in a warm bath is again is not going to be is going to only be beneficial to this. And so when it comes to sleep, the key thing here is a lot of people like to think about a morning routine and things like that. Maybe they like to think of some supplements they can take. I think on an even more basic level, what's even more important than any of that is setting a good nighttime routine. Because, excuse me, because a lot of people they think that they can be stimulated right up until the point to where they go to sleep, and then they're expecting their bodies to then go to sleep. But the body needs time to understand, hey, we're done from all the stress of our day. It's time to relax and get into a state where we can sleep. So if you're working all day and you maybe take some work after you finish your working hours, you go home and you continue with work, and you think that by 10 o'clock of working you can go to sleep, well, your body's still going to be active. It's still going to be awake until it knows that for sure you're done with any work that you're doing. I was actually talking about this with a client over dinner, and he was saying that sometimes when he travels, and even because he's Greek, and sometimes he has to still work when because he works for an American company, he still has to work when he goes to Greece, and he says that he'd finish work by about midnight Greek time, which would be about 5 p.m., so like typical 9 to 5, but it would take him until 2 a.m. to actually fall asleep because he's been stressed, and he needs his body to cool off afterwards. So it's giving yourself that sort of wind down time. So three things that really, really help me is A, setting a hard cutoff time for work, saying after 8, 9 p.m., I'm not touching a computer. I'm not touching my phone outside of, maybe texting a friend, but nothing work or stress related. Next is dimming the lights. So around my room, I have lamps that are warmer colors and softer colors too, or not softer, but dimmer. So nothing's as bright. So my body starts to get the cue of, okay, the sun is down. It's time to slowly get ready to sleep. And then on top of that, I try not to do anything too stimulating. I might, make a nice meal. I might eat something. I might do a warm bath. But outside of that, very, very chill, very zen. Because I'm not trying to stimulate my body. I'm trying to tell my body, hey, all the stress of the day is done. Okay. And then the warm baths, these are one of my new favorite things. If you have any sore joints, if you have um, any sore joints, any pains and aches anywhere in your body, a warm bath will be a massive, massive benefit to you. I had a friend running the marathon here in Toronto on the weekend, and leading up to it, he said his hip flexor was absolutely messed up. He did 2 warm baths leading up to it, and he was able to run the entire half marathon without a problem. And I was even stunned by that. I didn't think it would be that good. I knew it would feel better because it felt better the next day, but I didn't think it would be so good that he would be able to run the entire thing because he was limping going into it on the Thursday when he messaged me. And so I always recommend it to people. The basic protocol is 104-degree water for 45 to 90 minutes. Okay, and you do that once, maybe twice per week, and you're golden. So on a Friday night or Saturday night, if you have some downtime, highly, highly recommend you sleep like a baby afterwards. Okay. Day 5. Now I know this is a lot of boom, boom, boom coming at you guys, but there's the guide afterwards that you can follow along with. So gut health is very, very important, and I have it as its own section, even though it's heavily related to nutrition, because the gut is so, so important. Just for quick TLDR as to what gut health is and what the gut microbiome is. The gut microbiome is the trillions of bacteria that live in our digestive system. That is basically our own little world that we have inside of us. And we want to make sure that this world is healthy, because if it's not healthy, we have a whole host of problems that can happen, right? As you can see, it regulates our metabolism, it trains our immune system, it boosts testosterone levels, it helps us digest food and absorb nutrients. and it helps us produce up to 95% of serotonin, which helps significantly with mental illness. So serotonin is our body's happy chemical. It makes us, la-di-da, very, very happy and satisfied. And we know whenever we hug a family member, we have a good laugh with someone, that's serotonin being released. But most of it is being released in our digestive system, in our gut, not in our brain. And so if our gut health is off, there's no way our brain can make up the difference. And that's when a lot of people really suffer. They think that they have they have a chemical imbalance in here, but a lot of the times it's because they have a chemical imbalance in their gut. So this is so important from a variety of standpoints. Key one being happiness and fulfillment and ability to perform, and then also reset your metabolism, because the gut microbiome helps digest and absorb food. Now, there are 4 pillars towards gut health that I want to really touch on. First one is fermented foods or raw dairy. So as you can see here, the kefir is basically fermented milk. You put bacteria cultures in there, and they basically start to populate and consume the milk and break it down. And so you are essentially drinking the bacteria. This is a very, very good thing because the bacteria in there is very, very beneficial. Raw dairy is the same thing, except it's not fermented unless it's cheese. But yeah, I know raw dairy is illegal in a lot of places, like Canada, for example. But if you're in a state or part of the world that it is legal, by all means, seek out a good farmer, someone that does good practices, because if they don't do good practices, that's when you can possibly get sick. Otherwise, it's a very, very beneficial thing to do. I know that if I was in a country or in a state where it's legal, my fridge would be stocked up with it. Next is foods that feed the bacteria. So it's one thing to consume bacteria, next you have to get foods that feed the bacteria. This is typically going to be your insoluble fiber that comes from fruits, from vegetables, and things like that. So incorporating them in the diet is going to be very, very important, and that's why I really do think that fruits and some veggies are very, very good, very, very beneficial, especially for gut health. Next is collagen. So collagen is a long protein structure that makes up our bones, our connective tissues, our skin, our hair, things like that. And consuming it is also going to help because it helps repair the intestinal tract, the actual intestinal lining. Oftentimes, people from the inflammatory foods, like we'll get into in just a sec, they damage the lining of their intestines. One of the ways in which you can start to repair this is with collagen. It'll actually decrease bloating, it'll repair the intestines, and you'll have less instances or fewer instances of leaky gut. And you can either make this from bone broth with beef bones, or you can get a good quality hydrolyzed collagen supplement, though sometimes they can be difficult to digest. So, try it out and see how you feel. And all you really need is one maybe two, or sorry, 3 or 4 maybe servings of the collagen supplement, or once a week you make a batch of bone broth and you consume it. I typically opt for the collagen supplement just because it's a bit easier, a bit more convenient, and the downsides of it aren't anything major compared to most other supplements out there. But yeah, it's a very, very beneficial option. And on top of that, for skin, hair, and nails, also really helps as well. Last is, like we talked about before on day 1, is removing inflammatory foods from our diet. This is crucial because, like I said, the inflammatory foods will cause inflammation in the gut lining. It can cause leaky gut. It can cause bloating. So we want to make sure that we're not adding any extra stress to the body, and we're allowing it to digest the food properly. Because when you're bloated, when you're inflamed in your digestive system, you don't absorb and you don't break down the foods as well. Your body's more so worried about, let's get this thing out of us, which is why, it's a typical joke when people go to Taco Bell, they eat the Taco Bell and it comes right out of them. It's because the body's like, hey, I don't want this in here. But if you were to have a good quality steak, for example, well, the body's like, let's take this slowly and digest every little bit of this protein and fat, this delicious steak, as we can, because it's not causing any problems, and we want every nutrient we can out of the steak. So removing the inflammatory foods are going to be very beneficial. And inflammatory foods don't just mean junk food. They could also mean certain vegetables, depending on the individual. It's a purely bio-individual thing as to which vegetables upset you. For example, for me, I've noticed that peppers and other nightshades like an eggplant and things like that oftentimes might cause some gut irritation, whereas most other foods, even tomatoes, which are a nightshade, I don't have any issue with. It's usually peppers and the eggplants. As much as I like both, I try to keep them to a minimum just for that. Now, day 6 is stress management. And the reason why it wasn't earlier, because chronic stress can alter your metabolism significantly, but more so your behavior. So when you're chronically stressed, people will either overeat or they'll undereat out of the stress, and that both of those will cause problems to your body's ability, to your body's physiology when it comes to burning fats or burning carbs and things like that. And it will either cause people to gain weight or lose a significant amount of weight, even lose hair and things like that. So it's not a good thing. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our stress as best we can. And so the reason why I wasn't earlier in this list is because everything we've talked about up until this point has is something that can benefit in managing stress. Okay. But there's one thing that's missing, right? We have the nutrition, we have the exercise, we have the daily walks, we have the mastering the recovery, and we have gut health. But the one thing that's missing for me is a form of daily reflection. Okay. And my preferred way as of now is journaling. And I try to journal every day. I mean, I have my journal right here on my desk that I try to journal as much as possible, ideally daily, because this is something that really, really helped me when I was going through cancer. And you have a lot of thoughts flowing through your brain, things that aren't quite always the most positive. But when you write them down, when you write down your problems, you start to get a lot of clarity to think that, this isn't that bad. When you see it on paper, when you see it for what it is, you can then start to get yourself out of the equation and start to solve that problem and get some clarity as to what's going on. On top of that, we all have open loops in our mind that we don't close, and that can cause a lot of stress from not finishing things. So it's important that we write those things down and then close those loops, close those thoughts, and then plan for when we're actually going to get them done if it does require some action. And that way we can sleep better at night when we just get these things out of our brain. On top of that, you could try meditation and things like that. That's actually something I'm experimenting with right now because I've never really tried meditation up until last week, and so far it's actually pretty powerful stuff. I do feel a lot better on it, but I can attest even more so to journaling because I've been doing it for the last 4 years. Okay. And so it's pretty insane to me that a lot of people don't have a form of daily reflection because of how beneficial it is. So anytime I can, I try to advocate for it. It feels silly sometimes to write to yourself. I thought it was stupid in the beginning, thinking, what am I doing writing to myself? I'm not going to read this ever again. But as I started to do it more and more, I found that I began to actually benefit from it because I would feel so much better knowing that I've gotten what I wanted to get out on a piece of paper. And a good quote that I live by before we move on is paper is more patient than people. So sometimes if you were to share what's going on in your mind with a person, you won't always know that the person is going to be patient enough to listen to you. But a piece of paper is always going to be there, and it will sit with you for as long as you need until you get every last word out. So um, that's actually one of the reasons why that inspired me to journal. So I've even made an end of day journal if you don't know where to start, and it's in the guide as well on day 6. You'll be able to see it in case you're curious, in case you want to try it. It has everything. It has a daily reflection to kind of go over your day. It has a section where it's what do you want to do tomorrow, and then it has a series of 1 to 10 scales on your energy levels, your mood, your level of responsibility and accountability for the day, your how much you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, and things like that. So if you want access to it, it's in the doc as well. Well, you know how you get access to it at the end. Now we want to put everything together, okay? Because this is what really makes everything just kind of click. And we've covered a ton of things up until this point. From day 1 to day 6, we've covered nutrition, we've covered exercise, walking, recovery, gut health, and stress management. And now we want to make sure that we can work this all together because we all have busy lives and we can't all dedicate every waking hour to these things, right? We have other aspirations and other projects, but these are things that are also non-negotiable in order to live the best life we can. So we need to come up with some form of a system. Let's go over all the tasks, and then that'll make creating the system or the checklist much, much easier. So we have every day, we have nutrient dense whole foods in our diet, the meat, eggs, dairy, fruits, and vegetables. There's along with other natural foods that can accompany these. Things like raw honey, as an example, is one of my favorites. The doc goes into more detail on this, but you want to consume this 2 to 3 times per day, ideally. Sometimes some people might need only 2 meals. I know people that do OMAD. I don't always necessarily recommend OMAD because sometimes you can fall into the nutritional deficiency. Two times for me is sort of the minimum. 3 times is pretty ideal. Next, you want to include the main 5 and gut healthy foods into those meals. So yeah, like I said, the meat, eggs, dairy, fruits, and vegetables, but also fermented foods or raw dairy. You want to add the fiber and things like that, the prebiotics. You want to add the collagen, and you want to make sure that you remove the processed foods. Next is 2 to 3 workouts per week that promote muscle growth. So whatever days you are able to work out, you pick those days, you stick to those days, and you set up your workouts accordingly. Okay. And this is again 30 to 45 minutes. You want daily walks for 20 minutes minimum. Ideally, you go more because I don't think you can walk too much outside of walking all day. But yeah, if you walk 2 or 3 times per day for 20 minutes, you will see amazing benefits just from that alone. Next is having a strict nighttime routine where after a certain time, you stop work, you don't answer emails, you don't answer text messages that are work related. Maybe if your mom texts you, you can say hi. But outside of that, nothing. You start to dim the lights, you have to do less stressful, less stimulating activities, spend time with family, you cook a meal, go for a walk, things like that. Things that are very just letting the body know, hey, the stress of the day is done. You can get ready to sleep. And that will give your body enough time to recognize, hey, it's sleep time. Let's go to sleep. Next is the warm baths. 1 to 2 times per week is all you need. I highly recommend this, especially after a long week. I know, Peter, you've been out traveling for the last few days. So on Friday, try a warm bath. I highly recommend it. 40-degree water or sorry, 40 degrees Celsius water, 104-degree Fahrenheit for about 45 to 90 minutes. If you can't do 45 minutes and you can only do about half an hour, it gets pretty tough with how much you might start to sweat. That's okay. You can, but you'll feel much, much better the morning after when you wake up. And last but certainly not least is daily journaling, okay? Because this is what's really going to help with the mental side of things because we all have problems. And if we don't deal with those problems preemptively, then everything else is going to fall apart due to stress and due to worry, anxiety, things like that, okay? So you want to create daily and weekly checklists of everything that you have to do. That way, there's no guesswork. You basically you want to decrease the decision fatigue, and you want to increase the compliance, the self compliance to basically your own plan. Because I know that with work, we all have decisions we have to make every day. I think the last thing we need to be deciding on is what to eat, when to sleep, when to work out, what to do when we're at the gym, things like that, when to go for walks. If we have everything set up in a checklist, then we just do things. And the less we think and the more we do, the better we'll be. Unless what we need to do requires thinking, like work. But if you're still feeling overwhelmed, I have something for you guys. Okay. I'm gonna quickly get off sharing my screen. If this is still something that is troubling you guys, I want to offer everyone here who's watching, I know there's going to be people that watch the recording of this. I want to offer everyone here a game plan call with me where you and I will sit down one-on-one and implement everything we just talked about. The 7 principles that we talked about, from the nutrition, workouts, the walking, the recovery, the gut health, and the stress management, and how to put it all together. We'll focus on putting everything together into your specific situation for what goals you have, your schedule that you have currently, and where you want to go in the future, to make sure that it's as seamless as possible and as easy and effortless as possible for you to stick to it. Okay. And if you're wondering, oh, you're going to pitch me on this call? Well, I'm only going to talk about my program if I think it's a good fit and if you're interested in that, just to be completely upfront. Otherwise, it's going to be 99% about making sure that you are taken care of and you know what to do for the next 2 or 3 months to reset your metabolism and have a game plan even after that to feel as good as you can in the next few months. And the 1% is, if you're interested, we can talk about the plan. But what I'll do right now is I'll quickly share my calendar link. If Jose pops back on, that'd be awesome. But I will get into his question real quick. Actually, before I do, Peter, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, I can go into the link and see what's good for your calendar and schedule it once
Yeah,
I
yeah,
look
for sure.
mine. Well, I'm just kind of curious while we're talking here, just two things, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
Yeah,
I'm listening to you. So you're talking about the workouts like 2 to 3 days a week. So are you talking like more like a push-pull variety in
Yeah.
order to accommodate that and not so much focus on just, arms, shoulders. So again, push-pull, so to speak.
I would even I take it a step further and do upper lower, or maybe even you can go full body, or a mix of upper lower and full body. If you do 3 days per week, push pull legs works because you train out every muscle at least once.
Yeah.
But if you train twice per week, I would recommend doing something like an upper lower or full body twice a week, just because there you get a greater frequency of stimulus on the muscle, which is one of the reasons why I don't always recommend the bro split. So doing arms one day, legs the other day, shoulders in the next, chest, back, etc. Because while yes, you hit the muscle very hard on those days, you don't get the frequency. And I find that the frequency is very beneficial for growth and even for strength too. Because if you, for example, right now I'm really trying to get my bench up, so I make sure I have bench 2 times per week in my program to facilitate that. Right?
Next thing with that then, so in that example there, let's just say on the push or whatever.
Yeah.
So would that be like, hey, like 2 bench, 2 shoulders, 2 tries,
Yeah, yeah.
like
So
that?
yeah, so for a push day, what I like to recommend is a compound movement for chest, a compound movement for or actually 1 to 2 compound movements for chest, 1 to 2 compound movements for shoulders, and then an isolation for chest, an isolation for shoulders, and then I like to add in some triceps at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
For sure. Because what I always like to think about is in terms of movements as opposed to muscles, because muscles can get pretty complicated when you think about, okay, I have to make this have a little bit of chest, a little bit of tricep, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It can get kind of complicated. I like to think in terms of movements because it makes things simpler. So we have push, which is either horizontal or vertical. We also have pull, which is again horizontal or vertical. We have quad dominant. So this is like your squat. And we have hip dominant, which is like your deadlift, right?
Yep.
So on a push day, we have the 2 forms of push that we have are horizontal and vertical. So we want to get at least 1 or 2 of each. And then isolations is when you can start to think a bit more specific to the muscles, based on whatever you want to improve. So some days you might want to do a bit more chest, some days you want to do a bit more shoulders, some days you want to do a bit more tricep. So it's up to whatever muscles you want to really focus on, or whatever muscles are lagging in your body or physique, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You said you had 2 questions, right? Or was that, did you answer?
Yeah. And then the other would be, and you touched on it. I know, like the gut health. I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if I heard you right. You're talking about like inflammation markers. I think
Mhm.
that's the thing. Any like supplements you go with on that as far as helping to get that down? The
Yeah.
turmeric and black powder is something that I typically go with, and I
Hmm.
baby aspirin at night. But
Yeah.
what are you doing as far as helping to aid, with, like say, inflammation?
So inflammation, the turmeric is a good option because turmeric is not only anti-inflammatory for the gut, but even for joints and things like that. So turmeric is good. Another one is magnesium. So magnesium is also very good for the gut because it helps with the sort of flow. It helps with bowel movements and things like that. So keeping things moving in the gut is also very, very beneficial. Another supplement, actually, there's 2 more. The collagen supplement is also very beneficial because it decreases bloating and things like that, and it keeps the actual lining of the intestines healthy.
Okay.
So after, like, say when you were younger, I know that when I was younger, I used to eat more processed foods because I didn't know better. I know that my gut's been through a lot with that, and also with the gallons of chemotherapy I've taken. My gut's taken a bit of damage. So I know that repairing it with collagen or bone broth is going to be very, very important after all that damage. Um, just because again the tissue itself breaks down, so it helps against the effects of inflammation more so than the inflammation itself. It helps with the sort of downsides of inflammation. The next thing, and this is something I've been experimenting with over the last month, and it's been quite the energy. I've been noticing some energy differences in my day to day. It's been with activated charcoal. So activated charcoal, and this gets into a bit more specifics, which is why it's not in the sort of basic 7 day
Uh-huh.
protocol. But binders, they are, in the case of activated charcoal, it's basically a compound that is negatively charged that binds onto positively charged items in the body. And what it'll do is that when you consume it, it goes into your body and it starts to pick up on any toxins, any heavy metals, any pesticides, things like that that are lurking in your digestive system. So in many ways, it cleans out your digestive tract of all those things that could be causing some bits of inflammation or some inability to absorb and break down
You're
nutritious
eating,
food. What?
you're eating that charcoal?
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, it sounds crazy, but this is a specific kind of charcoal. It's not like charcoal you'd use for your barbecue.
No, of course
It's
not.
yeah, it's heated even higher, and it's actually a form of medicine that's been used for thousands of years in ancient Egypt, and ancient Greece, and ancient Rome. And it's even if you look into the naturopathy community, it's something that they use for if someone has food poisoning, they would take it, and it helps
Yeah.
calm down the digestive tract. And so the thing is, you don't need much because these things have massive surface area. So I use like the tip of a teaspoon, essentially, maybe about half an inch into the teaspoon, into some water. I'll drink that first thing in the morning, and then it helps kind of flush any toxins out in my body. And I know that because of the sheer amounts of drugs I had to take for my cancer, I know that there's definitely stuff that's lurking in my body. So as much as possible that I can flush it out, the better. And on top of that too, for warm baths, putting some of the charcoal into a warm bath is also beneficial because your skin is a detox organ, and when you're in the warm bath, you're basically turn up your skin's ability to detoxify heavy metals and other toxins. And so when it gets into the water, it'll bind onto something from onto the activated charcoal, and so it won't get reabsorbed into the body. It also the activated charcoal will also help draw out some of those toxins as well. So it's a good add-on into the warm baths as well. So yeah, it seems weird. I thought it was weird too. I thought it would taste terrible, but it actually you don't really taste anything. Because I've also heard people that brush their teeth with it, and I tried it a couple times too, and I haven't tried it enough to see whitening, but that's sort of the thing is that they say it whitens your teeth because you'll start to bind onto some of the gunk in your mouth.
Yeah, I know there's some toothpaste out there with the
Yeah,
charcoal, all that.
yeah,
I make my own water filtration, and I use charcoal, so that's why that's interesting. I
yes, nice.
up river birch,
Okay,
I use
nice.
that. And then from there, I run it with sand. But
Hmm.
okay, yeah, the charcoal, I
Yeah,
totally get that because that's one of the best water filtration out there. To eat it, I didn't think of that, but as I
yeah,
hear you go through it, it doesn't
yeah.
sound ridiculous to me as I maybe thought it would have.
No, and the thing is, I use a powdered form, but you could use capsule form as well. It does the same thing. Once it gets
You
into
get
your
that at
stomach,
a supplement store?
yeah, yeah. So you get it. You should be able to find it at most health stores. So might be a bit more of a niche product because I didn't know about it until maybe about a year ago as an option. But it's because you don't really see it around. But it's something that now that I have my eye on it, I've been able to find it at a few stores. You can also just order it on Amazon.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely look for it. Now that's really interesting, and I ain't gonna keep you. So I see the calendar link here. I'll
Yeah,
look go in there. That should be available. I can go ahead and do that. And
absolutely.
probably next week will be better. I'll be at home
Yeah,
where I can give like full attention. But I really appreciate this, man. You giving an hour of your time,
yeah.
uh, slides, all that. I think this is something very near and dear. A lot of this I like to think I know over
Mhm.
trial and error, but I am not about to tell you that I have it all down perfect and pat. Believe me. So I just want
Okay.
to very much. I appreciate the time you put in to putting all this together and giving an hour of your time tonight.
Thanks, man. That really means a lot. Thank you, Peter. Thank
Yeah,
you. I'm
absolutely.
always I'm always happy to share as much as I can
Yeah.
because I do believe this is really important.
No,
So thank
that
you.
no, no, absolutely. If anything else comes up, man, whatever it is, hell, where I'm at on LinkedIn, reach out,
Yeah.
keep in touch. But I will I'll get with your calendar.
Mhm.
And outside of that, thank you, man. And it was a real pleasure to chat with you tonight.
Awesome. Pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much. Have a
You welcome, man.
thank you. Have a lovely evening, and I look forward to chatting with you next week.
Sounds good to me, man. You take care. See
Awesome. Take care.
you, brother. Bye now.
Bye.